Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is another week, another cup of tea. Week 18, I believe, episode 18. I have done 18 of these. So before we get into the topic, thank you because obviously people continue to watch every week, continue to listen for 18 weeks. That's crazy. So thank you. Makes me feel like, I'm not wasting my time. As always, I always say this isn't for the views. It's not for the likes. It's just here to relate to people. But seeing that people continuously watch it, listen to it, makes me feel good. I have no idea who does. So as always, if you reach out to me and just let me know you're listening, let me know you're watching, I do appreciate it. So let's get into it. This week we're talking about the food service, working in the food service, and also respecting those in the food service. As most of you guys know, I worked at a deli. I worked at my family's deli a few years ago, for 2 or 3 years. And man, I went in with absolutely zero knowledge of anything food service related. I started as a busboy. And by the time I left, 2.5 years later, by the time I left, I was basically working the role as a manager. I went from cleaning the grease traps, cleaning up, displaying food in the showcase, to eventually working the line, being the one to make the food, make the sandwiches. Ended up teaching myself to cook some things, so I was in the kitchen cooking some stuff. I hopped up on the register here and there when they needed me, and eventually got to the point where I was closing as manager. I was counting the money at the end of the night, closing the register. On payday, I was making sure people were getting their checks or cashing in their checks. It's cool, man. In 2 or 2.5 years, I basically went from busboy to manager, and it was cool, man. I worked with cool people. I got to meet cool customers. It was a cool experience. There was some wild, crazy stuff that, happened, and I'm sure it happens in every restaurant and deli and all that. But moral of the story for my sake, I learned that the food service, working in the food industry, was not for me. It's not, everything's not for everybody. So shout out to the people that do it for a living, that enjoy doing it, that are happy doing it, that have been doing it all their lives. It's a 24/7 hour job. Like no matter what position you are, it's an everyday job. And then when it gets to the point of you either being a manager or owner, even if you guys are closed, if something happens there, it's your responsibility. So really shout out to the people that do it for a living, man. Y'all are great. People need to do it. It wasn't for me. I realized that after a couple years. I wanted to have my weekends free. I wanted to have a personal life. If people were sick, or if one of the managers was sick or wasn't available, or they were on vacation, I would have to come in. There was a time the manager was sick and had to leave, because we're in food, he was pretty sick. He had to leave, and it was my day off, and I had to come in because there was nobody else. A manager needed to be there. So I went. It's cool. I enjoyed having that responsibility. I enjoy working. I enjoy working for what I have. But the food service just was not for me. But it made me gain a huge respect for anybody in the food service. I've always respected cooks and waiters and this, that, whatever. But really, after working in it, I appreciate it more. I appreciate you guys more. I know, and this is with every restaurant. It wasn't just with our deli. Customers can be rude, and this is a big reason why the food service isn't for me. Is that as a manager, as an owner, you need to have that mentality of the customer is always right. And I can't have that mentality. I just can't. I get it. The customers are the ones that give you business, but at the same time, your employees are the ones that also keep you in business. Without your employees, unless the owner or manager is going to work themselves, your place isn't going to run. So, I get it. I get why people need to have that mentality, but I can't. If people disrespect me, I'm going to get disrespectful with them right back. If people accuse me of shit, I'm going to defend myself. So, that was a big thing, but I know that's everywhere. I know that's in every restaurant where people are just negative people. They're just shitty people. They just always find a reason to either complain about how something tastes or how it looks, or after they finish it, they complain that they didn't enjoy it and they want a refund even though they ate the whole thing. Maybe something was smaller than the last time they got it. Maybe something's more expensive than they wanted it to be. Whatever it is, I get it. Again, good for you guys that can have that mentality of the customer's always right. I just couldn't. But I will say, working there, I before working there and at the start of working there, I was definitely a guy that would just take stuff. People disrespect me, and I take it. And working at the deli, whether it being the people I worked around that helped me grow, and even some of my regular customers that helped me grow, it got to the point where I became comfortable defending myself. I became comfortable not accepting disrespect from people. But again, shout out to the guys I used to work with and the ladies that I used to work with. I mean, it was almost always a fun time. But yeah, man, it just wasn't for me. But for those watching, man, respect the people in the food service. I mean, look, when COVID first hit, we stayed open. I was out. That was the beginning of 2020, and I was out for about 4 or 5 weeks. I was very, very sick, and turned out I had COVID. And at the time, that's when COVID was like really hitting this country. And I mean, there was no vaccine. It was impossible to get tested. That's when they were like sticking the Q-tips like all the way up your nose. And it was like impossible to find a place to get tested. This was like January 2020. So I was out sick for like 4 or 5 weeks. And when I got better, I had to go back in. I wasn't getting paid to be sick. I wasn't getting any sort of unemployment or anything like that. So, I mean, that's another thing. I mean, think about the people in the food business when COVID hit. So many people got to stay home. So many people were given unemployment or some sort of pay from their own company. But the people in the food service didn't. People in the food service stayed open for the most part. We were working. And, they were calling us essential employees. The government was calling us that. But, I mean, we were still being treated like shit by people. Customers come in, yelling, complaining. That's just crazy. I mean, as a person, how can you come into a place of business, especially when COVID first hit, when a lot of places weren't open? You come into a restaurant or, fast food restaurant, a deli, whatever, and you treat the employees like crap. I mean, they're out here while people are dying of this disease. They're out here for you, making food for you, making sure, you get fed. And people still treated them like crap. It's just crazy, man. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people in this world that just always need to have something negative go on and just treat people poorly. One of my favorite parts, and I think a lot of people, when they go to restaurants, when they have like a favorite restaurant, I think a lot of people are like embarrassed to go there too often. I know there's a place in Hamden that I have recently discovered, and my fiance has gone there like her whole life. She used to live there. I recently discovered that place, and they have a really good cheesesteak. So when I first like tried it, we were going there pretty often. I'd always have her like go in for me because I know some of you might be shocked. I don't like people. I don't like calling on the phone to like order food. I don't like going in to pick things up. I don't like that interaction. People stress me out. So I'd have my fiance go in. I would pay for it. And she would come out and she'd be like, "Oh man, they were like, they saw me. They're like, oh, it's you again." But they knew her from before from her growing up there. But to those people who think you should be embarrassed or like don't feel comfortable about going into a restaurant frequently, like if you love the food, go there as much as you want, because I loved when customers would come in frequently and I would get to know them. I would know their order, because most of the time you're ordering the same thing. So they would walk in, and when it was their turn, and if I was serving them, I knew their order, and they loved that. And don't get me wrong, the cash tips were nice. A lot of customers would give you a couple dollars, give you a five, give you a 10. So that was always nice. And it got to the point where like people knew who tipped. Like when it came to like regular customers, some regular customers tipped, some didn't. But I mean, I wasn't there for that. Luckily I was getting paid hourly and at a decent hourly rate. So, we weren't living off tips. I know some restaurants here, you're living off tips, which is so crappy. But I'm not going to get into that because I've never worked in that business where I'm only getting a couple dollars an hour and I have to live off tips. But man, I loved the regular customers. I loved like if I was in the back cooking and a customer would come in and they would ask for me, and like people would, one of my coworkers would come in the back and be like, "Hey, so and so's out there. He wants you to make their food." Just stuff like that was so cool, man. And that was something I love, and definitely miss some of the guys that would come in, ask me how I was doing, ask me how my girlfriend at the time was doing. Now my fiance, we weren't engaged when I was working at the deli. Ask me how my stepson was doing, ask me how the family was doing. It was just so cool, man. But at the end of the day, moral of the story, it wasn't for me. It's not for everybody, but thank you to those who do it for a living, because I know it's your life, man. It's throughout the day, and then if something happens after hours, and then for most people it's also a weekend job. You're there on the weekends. You gotta make sure you please every single customer, and you have that mentality of the customer's always right. Good for you, because I can't have that. I mean, really, moral of the story with this is, to those who haven't worked in food service, it's not easy for these guys. I mean, I'm not saying all jobs are easy, but I mean, really, to the cooks, to the servers, even to the cashiers. I mean, I was treated so poorly as a cashier with some customers. Because either you're not giving them their change fast enough, or they don't like the new modern electronic register where, like, if you swipe a card, you flip it over and they can like choose to tip you, and then you sign. It's like a little touch screen. And the older generation doesn't necessarily like change, especially when it comes to electronics. And they take it out on the employees when it's not our decision. We're told what to do and we do it. But again, moral of the story, just remember this. If you've never worked in the food industry, when you go out to eat, just be kind to your waiters or waitresses. Tip them if they gave you good service. I'm not one of those people that says tips are required. I mean, people might not like that, but I don't think tips are required, but they are definitely, if you're getting good service, if you enjoy your person that is serving you, tip them, dude. They will greatly appreciate it. Be kind to the cashiers. Thank the cooks if you have the opportunity to see them. Yeah, man. I mean, just really, moral of the story. Thank you to everybody that runs restaurants and different food service places. Because honestly, again, it's a lot. It is a lot of work. And people choose to do it for forever. And you guys are awesome. So with that being said, I think that's all I got. Next week, we're going to talk about pets in our lives. I know that sounds weird, but animals are just so cool, man. Having pets is so cool. They just really help grow your family, and man, they're just like staples in your family. It's awesome. But we'll get into it next week. So until then, stay beautiful. Don't judge people. Don't be a dick. And peace out, Girl Scouts.